basic electrical for your Volkswagen or basic electrical for VWs. Good morning, thanks for stopping by Double G's Garage. So today we got a lot of things going on. It looks like summertime came a little early. It's gonna be probably mid-80s today, but we're gonna try to get some work done out here. First things first though, we gotta clean up this garage. We got a mess. Okay, hopefully I haven't lost anybody yet, but one thing I wanted to cover, this is basic electrical for VWs. I'm not going to do a whole lot of diagnostics here, but in order to understand how our electrical systems work, I wanted to just show one thing real quick. Two lights in your instrument cluster or in your speedometer on our VWs. The one on the left is oil pressure. Remember we talked about it earlier? That is that green wire going to the oil pressure switch. It is being grounded by a closed oil pressure switch, and it will go off when the engine starts up and that switch opens. The one on the right, it's very important. I did a 6 to 12 volt conversion because this is a 64 VW. That light on the right is your charging circuit. If it's a stock VW, it's a generator. In my case, it's an alternator. That light is that exciter wire, that green wire going to the top of the generator or to the alternator. If that light is not lit up, then generally it's because one of these small bulbs that go in there is bad. It has to see, I believe it's a 4-volt reference signal for the alternator to start charging. So if that bulb's bad, the system's not going to charge. So I just wanted to cover that while I'm here. If you power up your electrical system on your VW, maybe you're doing a conversion like I did, and that light doesn't light up, you need to check that bulb. Because if that bulb has an open circuit, if it's burnout, if it's not in there, it generally could be the cause of your charging system problem or lack of charging in your system, because it has to have that bulb in the circuit to work correctly to get the signal. Okay, back to our fuse panel, and we're gonna dig a little bit deeper into what we mentioned earlier about our loop. It has to have a loop. So we've got our ground wire, we've got our positive at the battery, our series circuits must loop all the way back to the battery. So we've got power coming out, going through our components, going through our wires, going through our circuits, going into our fuse panel, protecting circuits, and it must, through the ground, make or complete the loop back to the battery, or the circuit's not going to operate. Now, hopefully I'm not losing you here. But part of that is, if you're looking at the fuse panel in our Volkswagens, the top of our fuse panel is the power going in. The bottom of the fuse panel is the power going out to the components that we're protecting. So that's pretty important if you don't understand. When you're connecting to the back, you can see how it's arranged. I have my power feeds coming into the top, and these are the wires going, or the components on the bottom that are being fed or protected by the fuses. If I was to remove a fuse from the fuse panel and test it with my volt-ohm-meter, I'm still going to have power across the top even if this fuse is out. But if it's blown or if it's missing, it's not going to send the power out to the component. So just understand, these are the feed B pluses and 15s coming in, switched ignition, and this is the component side of the fuse panel at the bottom. Years ago, I had a deluxe bus And when I hooked up my gigantic sound system in it, I inadvertently connected the component here, even though I had a protected circuit to my stereo system, I connected it here. So what do you think is going to happen when I have a high load on that circuit because I turned the stereo up real loud while I'm driving? Yep, it blew the fuse and it shut off my ignition. So it blew that red fuse. I should have connected to the top side of it because I already had a protected circuit on the stereo system. I didn't need to run it through the fuse for the ignition. If it had been connected up here, and if there was a problem with the circuit, it would have blown the fuse in the circuit for the stereo, not my ignition fuse. I was driving down the road, cranked the jams up, blew my ignition fuse, shut the vehicle off. So you need to understand it's a loop, and my power is coming in through the top of the fuse panel, going out through the bottom, and the fuse is protecting the circuit. Hopefully that helps somebody out. Okay, here's a common problem that I get a lot of questions about. Why is my starter dragging? Why is it starting slow? And there's several different things that could cause this. I'm looking at the back of my 69 convertible here, but I'll show you on an illustration this component right here. And that is a rubber mount. There's two of them, and there's also one at the front of the transmission. Those are rubber mounts for your transmission. Now I'm going to show you in this illustration, there's a ground strap toward the front of the transmission. Why is that there? Most of our electrical problems that we run into are caused by faulty grounds, dirty grounds, loose connections, frayed wires, those types of things. Your transmission is mounted on rubber mounts for comfort, so that it doesn't vibrate the engine through the chassis of the vehicle. Now, if you did not have the ground strap that I'm illustrating, you would not have a loop. Remember, we've been talking about that loop. You have to complete the circuit in a loop. Where is your starter mounted? It's mounted to the transmission. If you don't have the ground strap in there, you cannot complete the circuit. You will not have a good ground. Now, it may be able to find a ground somewhere, but chances are it's not going to have a good ground because your transmission's mounted on rubber mounts. So what you have to have is a ground strap to complete the ground circuit or the loop back to the battery. So that's why you have this ground strap on your transmission. It's been a question that I've been asked before. So if you've got a starter that's dragging, it could be several things. It could be the starter bushing. It could be a bad starter. But the first thing I would check is make sure you have that ground strap in place and you can clean it up. Take the bolts loose, sand the connections so they're nice and shiny, put it back on, and the majority of the time that'll solve your starter problems, especially if you've got a 6-volt original VW and it hasn't been converted to 12. Okay, that about wraps it up for today's basic electrical for VW. I hope it made some sense. I hope I explained things in a way you could understand. Stay tuned for more. We're going to have more videos where we actually get into diagnosing some of the components on the 64 that I'm getting back on the road. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section and I'll respond back to you. But again, I tried to simplify things. I tried to not get too deep into what we're doing today. I didn't get into Ohm's law calculations. I didn't get into voltage drop yet. We'll get that later when we're actually diagnosing components and why they're maybe not working like they should. Just a little blast from the past here before I finish the video off. If you've got one of these books, then you probably worked as a flat rate technician in a Volkswagen dealership back in the day when we actually still had these wonderful cars coming in and getting worked on at the dealership. It was exciting. So I remember, you know, we were working on a lot of Rabbits and GTIs and a lot of the water-cooled vehicles because that was the time frame. But you know, we were still getting air-cooled Volkswagens coming into the dealership, so it was cool. It was good to work there, and I learned a lot many years ago. So again, I hope you enjoy what we covered today. I hope it makes some sense. Again, we're going to get deeper into diagnosing specific components on the Volkswagen. I just wanted to kind of brush through some basic electrical theory and how some of the main components work on our vehicles. So stay tuned for more. If you like what you saw, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It'll help me out here, and we can keep doing these videos. Take care, stay safe. We'll see you next time.